Week 10 is underway and it is time to navigate those injuries and the bye weeks once more. And for that, we may need some streaming options. So, Tom, let's start by having a look at this week's bye weeks where we have to avoid some players. Well, except for the Titans, obviously, as we covered on the main show.
There's not much really to go for there, is there?
No, unless anyone's going to be missing Cam Ward this week. But we've got the Bengals, we've got the Chiefs, we've got the Cowboys, we've got the Titans. So just those 4 teams. Which players do you reckon people might be missing this week?
I've got Chase all over the place. So, I mean, he's a quite a downer for me. Chiefs-wise, obviously, you've got Mahomes had a bit of a resurgence this year. And Rice, since he's comes back, been pretty elite, hasn't he? And obviously, CD Lamb, phenomenal wide receiver. Yeah. So these are all going to have pretty big effects on your lineups, I reckon.
And we said on the main show as well, Joe Flacco. People might actually be missing Joe Flacco this week after what he's done throwing for nearly 500 yards last week. There are another wave of players, though, we are losing or potentially losing injury. And some of these players on here have been cropping up a little bit quite regularly over the last few weeks. Full disclosure, this is not a conclusive list because when you start to look at the injury reports this time of the season, it can be tricky to navigate on a Friday when we're recording because lots of players sit out on Thursday. So keep your eyes peeled for emerging news. But Brock Purdy did not practice on Thursday again, so we may be with Mac Jones again this week. Jen Daniels out, but doesn't need surgery, so that is some good news. Kyler Murray is on the IR, and we're being told we may well get a bit more Kyler Murray this season. We shall find out soon as well. When you say you might get him for the rest of the season, it's not really reassuring, is it, though? Bucky Irving, originally out with that foot injury, then was extended because of a shoulder injury. That's starting to drag on a little bit now, so that is a little bit of concern. Ramondre Stevenson out with that toe injury again. We joked last week maybe he dropped something on it because he is akin to dropping things. Can we hopefully see a little bit more Travion Henderson this week? A breakout is pushing last week. It was promising, let's say at best last week from Henderson. Let's see if we get a little bit more. Ricky Pearsall out again. This knee injury is becoming a bit of a confusing situation for Ricky Pearsall. Obviously, a player that we were really high on pre-season, as many people were, and that injury has really scuppered his season so far. Chris Godwin, we said on the main show we were hoping to have Godwin back this week. It's been confirmed he is out. Ted McMillan, questionable, was announced yesterday. So during Thursday practice with a hamstring injury. Wide receivers and hamstrings are always of a little bit of concern. And then Harold Fannin as well has flagged up today with a hamstring niggle. So that is one to watch moving into the weekend as well. So as always, keep an eye on these on Sunday morning. But if you've got any of these players, have a backup option ready on your bench and maybe have a look at those waves before free agency opens on Friday as well. Before we move on to some plug and play QBs, please do remember to subscribe, like, give us a share as well. For your streaming options, your starts and sits, your heroes and zeros every single week. You've got some QBs we might want to consider, though, Tom. And we've got an array of kind of rostership points on there, one of which is going to be a tough sell, we admit, but is available.
Yeah, so we'll start off with the man on the left, so Marcus Mariota. He's averaging 17.94 points in his starts this season. So, he's had a tough career, hasn't he? But he can be a serviceable quarterback, and his roster chip's so low at just 25%. You're likely to be able to pick him up. Deebo Samuel's back fit, and Mariota knows that offense better than the last time he played for them. The Lions have been pretty poor against passing, giving chunks of points. They've looked quite fragile. So we think, Mariota could be a good start really for you there if you need a fairly likely rosterable plug-and-play QB this week.
Yeah.
The man in the middle. Give me a chance to discuss this one. So Davis Mills, they've got the Jaguars this week. Mills had an interesting career when he came as a rookie, didn't he? At points, he looked decent, but at other points, he really, really struggled. The Jags are giving up the most points to quarterbacks in the league. Seventh most points in the league.
Yeah.
And Mills is averaging around 20.13 points, So fifth in the league when you take out Dallas and the Bengals, who they aren't playing this week. He's an option that excites me. Yes, I'm going to say that. And he's highly likely to be available for you. So plug him in. And hope he's got a decent roster of sort of wide receivers to throw the ball to. Those couple of rookies, Noel and Higgins, who we hope can sort of come good. And obviously he's got Nico Collins there, who's back and raring to go. And then the man on the right.
Davis Mills, the only thing we can say positive is it's not about Davis Mills, is it? It's about the Jags. And so when they're giving up 7th most points in the league, 2 quarterbacks, there is a route to David Mills getting that. Will he get that 20.13 there, giving up on average? Yeah. If you get 15, you'll probably be happy. But 15 or 0, if you've got anything else to plug in, you take what you get, don't you, when you are struggling for quarterbacks?
Yeah, and at this time of the season with injuries, I mean, we talked about Kyler. You mentioned Kyler being out. I've got Kyler in a Bestball league, and I've got no other QBs. And I was doing really well, and then not having him has just absolutely killed me. So unfortunately, I don't think I'll be winning anything in that league this year. And then, 70% rostered, our final man, the man on the right, Sam Darnold. They've got the Cardinals this week. It's not an ideal matchup for Darnold, but he's been steady and he's looked, like a changed man really since coming into Seattle. We've seen how productive JSN's been. Is it Darnold elevating JSN, or has JSN really just become that truly elite wide receiver that we expect him to be when he came into the league? All right, look, it's not exciting, but you could do a lot worse. We've recommended Davis Mills. If you're struggling for a starting quarterback, I think Darnold, is if he's available out of all those, he's clearly the man to go for.
Having a look at some streaming tight end options as well then. So first up, we've got Theo Johnson, 28% rostered, so a good chance he's knocking about. He's facing Chicago this week, who are giving up on average 15.24 fantasy points per game to tight ends. Theo Johnson has absorbed some of those targets vacated by Malik Neighbors. When Jackson Darts have to, we always say it's the rookie's best friend is his tight end. And Wan'Dale Robson is obviously attracting loads of targets with Neighbors out, but Theo Johnson's been doing bits as well. Last 3 games, 7, then 4, then 6 targets. Doesn't matter how much you throw him the ball. It seems he catches it 3 times a game at the minute. But he's also got 2 touchdowns in the last couple of weeks. So if you are struggling at tight end, you've got that touchdown upside. And he feels like a player that should be good for around 11-ish sort of points. So here's someone that is definitely worth looking at. I cannot believe that Colston Loveland is only 58% rostered after he just ran through. I'm trying to sell it off that it's a big deal running through the Bengals defense. They were horrible and they couldn't bother to tackle him. But given this week, he's got the Giants, who are giving up an average 12.9 points per game to tight ends. Colston Loveland, I think you could do a heck of a lot worse at tight end. And surely, in more than 58% of leagues, there is someone who is tight end needy that could do with plugging someone in. So he could be worth looking at. A player that I think a couple of years ago we were very high, and we've just not really seen anything to justify it since. So he's not a player we mention very often, but Dalton Schultz has got the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. They are giving up the second most fantasy points per game to tight ends, 18.70. Is available in 2/3 of leagues. So Dalton Schultz could be an option for you to look at as well this week. So a few tight ends there, if streaming tight ends is what you like to go for. Then, Tom, I mean, in Ed's absence, I'll roll out his catchphrase. The only way to play defense in fantasy football is to stream your defenses. So who are some streaming options for us this week?
I hope fans of the show would be able to guess from the logos. But first of all, we're going to go with Tampa Bay Bucks. So just 30% rostered. Their defense 6th this week. So why do we think they're so lowly rostered? Well, obviously they were on bye last week, and everybody listens to Ed, and they're streaming their tight ends. And everyone listens to us, as we would say on the show, would you keep a defense on your bench? No. You're likely to have dropped them. So they're widely available, and a really safe pickup, you would have thought, this week. I mean, Patriots have been decent. We obviously discussed those on the main show. But I think, they're highly likely to be available for you. Next up, the Cleveland Browns. They've got the Jets this week. So their defense 11 on the season. They've been up and down. Myles Garrett has been doing what he does, and we've seen him throw a tantrum a few times, but he's not been particularly happy about the offense. It's a matchup.
Is still bad. He's just like, I don't know what he's surprised about.
He signed up.
He wanted the money.
Yeah.
He was going to win a Super Bowl. No, he wanted cash. Stop moaning, Garrett. If you're
You know,
listening.
it's a matchup. It's a matchup we love. Not even, we've got a like is written down the notes, but actually, having watched the Jets the other week in London, it's a matchup we absolutely love. They're coming off the bye, and prior to that, they were hammered by the Bengals. But as we said, Cleveland is a top 5 defense this week. The Jets' attack's been inconsistent at best. I think the Jets perhaps will struggle to stay on the field with those trades they've made this week. They've certainly weakened themselves, the team, I would argue. We can debate over draft picks and these kind of things. But, if I was a Jets fan, I would be a little bit concerned for the remainder of the season. And pray for draft season and hope they use the money wisely. And then finally, your boys, Mr. Pestle, the Baltimore Ravens. So 49% rostered. So, 50-50 chance really of them being available for you. They take on the Vikings this week. And it's a bit of a copy and paste their 2024 season, we could say. The Ravens defense has been pretty confusing. Poor early on. They hit the bye week. And then, they move things around. They free up Kyle Hamilton. And boom, the Ravens defense is good again. Only one only one touchdown conceded the last 2 weeks. And I think McCarthy will get a little bit of humbling potentially this week after finding that swagger in week 9. So that's it for defenses. And then we're going to move on and have a look at the best ball, right?
Yeah, so for any of you that are joining us for the first time, so we've put this into our leads for our charity tournament, TH Fans Football Bestball Bonanza. We thought we'd just have a little bit of a rundown. So if you're joining just at this bit in the chapters, go back and listen to the rest as well. But we want to have a bit of a rundown of where we're at so far. We'll start off, Tom, having a look at our top 10. I'm going to read the names out because it's nice to have your name read out on something, isn't it? Sometimes I would like to be in the top 10 for my name. So we've got top of the pile and starting to create a little bit. 12 points at this stage, say, isn't huge, but it's as far as we've had this season, is a little bit of a gap. So Wardy 145, Pit 56, 5-yard rush. Murph of Fire Podcast is in third. Draft Room Baller is in fourth. Vince Mapstone in fifth. Kylie in 6th, Morriman 84, who was up until this week 10th on our all-time scores leaderboard that we'll get to shortly as well. April Balask, RB Raven 30, who we were fortunate to meet a couple of years ago at the UK Fantasy Football Collective gathering as well, an active member over the Discord channel for the Fantasy Sanctuary. So it's good to see him up there. And then Hallam 13 of the I've lost the name, the Jefferson My Drinks podcast as well. So it's nice to see some people that we've seen in there lots, but it's also nice to see some players that are new to us this year and we don't interact with as much. We want to have a look at the playoff picture, didn't we, Tom, and our top 50. Before we go through some of the key names on there, I made a right hash of this graphic beforehand and got some names in this. So it was meant to be in a very specific order. It's now in no particular order other than the order I cobbled it back in together after a mistake. Which names on there stand out to you, Tom? Any that you recognise from our leagues previously as well?
Obviously, there's a variety of league leaders in there. So you've got players like Alex Zero or Alex Obro, S Benzo 1. They're both leading their divisions. TM. I can think particularly of the divisions that I'm commissioning because it's split between myself, you, and Ed. So that's leader of the Thundercats and Teenage Mutant. No, sorry, you've gone Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Why is it not Ninja Turtles? That upsets me.
It was Hero back in the day of the cartoon, wasn't it?
I'm sure it wasn't. I always remember the song being... Anyway, let's not debate that. We were here talking about fantasy football.
Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. No, sorry, I'll sing it so well we'll get a copyright infringement.
Air Jordan Mason as well, top of the Top Cat division. Looking other way around, obviously Nwaza's quite a good name for us. 5-yard rush. Murph still in that list, isn't he? Peter United, well, he's a divisional leader. So, lots of fantastic scores, and it's still pretty close at the top. I was having a quick look through the stats myself, and we looked at top 50. I was looking at the top 15, and within the top 15, the leading sort of divisions, you've got the Top Cat division, you've got Ren and Stimpy, and Wacky Races. They've all got 2 players from that top 15. So I suppose if you're playing in those leagues, you can pat yourself on the back because you're playing in perhaps the most difficult divisions, we might say. But pleasing overall, it's been an absolutely fantastic season. It's wonderful to have everybody back, and it is for a fantastic, phenomenal cause. I cannot stress enough, how much of a wonderful cause it is for. So thanks everybody who's sort of donated and got involved in it.
And so many people in different areas of the fantasy community. Also got Peter McManus there, the Jefferson Madrinks podcast. Seagull Boy, someone who's been in our leagues from way before the show years as well. there's a couple people on there that I've been in leagues with for so long. You feel like you kind of know them just via sleeper. We've got Gurmeet there from Fancy Game Day. Shout out to Hudson Cullen, son of Matt Cullen, over who does the JT2. So it's great to see that Hudson there is outperforming his dad. Congratulations, Hudson. You are the true fancy giant in the family. Loads of kind of great people mixing in there as well. So it's great to see all of those people involved. Shipwreck JC as well, who takes part in our stateside leagues, as does Az. Huge thanks to everyone involved in there. We would just also like to make a special mention to KSOG1 of the Bluey division, who has entered our top 10 all-time scores. So we decided last year that we would keep everything the same, scoring, roster, everything. So we wanted to have our top 10 weekly scores. As you can see, last year, week 11 and 14 really dominated, spent some monstrous performances in there. So we only have one entry into the top 10 from 2025. Now that is KSOG, who got a score of 231.9 last week. So from the Blues. So congratulations, you are into our top 10, ready to drop straight down as soon as we have another couple of people in. But you're there at the minute, so congratulations. Anything you want to add, Tom, on Bestball Bonanza or otherwise for week 10 before we pack it in and call it a day?
No, just as we said, thank you for supporting those who do. And obviously, we're not the only charity-run event. If you can support as many of those as you can, it's always wonderful to sort of, play the fantastic, wonderful game we play and do some good whilst doing it.
So that is all from us. We will be back on Monday. Ed may be back, depends if he's still poorly sick or not. You may get the A team instead of Tom and I. We shall see. But for now, that's all from me. It's all from Tom. So as always, bada bing, bada bye. And Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.